Thank you. Can you all hear me? I don't want you to miss any of my invective. Everyone can hear. I was just telling them no one asked me what the title of my speech was going to be, and I thought I had a really good one 2 weeks ago. I wanted it to be Donald Trump, America's greatest president. Because I figured if he keeps his promises, he will be America's greatest president. And also, I kind of assume everything you guys hate about him, I love about him. However, we have these Cro-Magnons, not many of them, but in America, and they are defending every single thing Trump does. He sells out the base, and you see all these tweets online or blog posts going up. Oh, you don't see what he's accomplished here. He's playing 3D chess. If I hear that 3D chess thing one more time, I'm going to track them down and kill their children. They are really not helping. We need to hold his feet to the fire. He's very easily distracted. So maybe the title would be Donald Trump, America's greatest president, with a question mark. We'll leave it at that. If you are familiar with my work, you know that I was Donald Trump's first supporter even before Donald Trump thought he could win. He won me over with the Mexican rapist speech, and there was no turning back. It's not like he's some master political strategist. He didn't come up the way most politicians do. He wasn't a senator, he wasn't a governor. He was a reality TV star. He just saw this $1,000 bill lying on the ground and said, hey, anybody else gonna pick this up? I think I'll pick this up. Because for 20 years, both political parties have been lying to us. They win an election, but the American people don't win. No, their job is still outsourced. Their manufacturing plant gets moved to China. Their wages are going down like mad as cheap labor is dumped on the country. Their kids are boxed out of college by affirmative action for immigrants, new people being brought in. That's what a win for the Republican Party looks like. But that wasn't what a win looks like for Donald Trump. No, he was the first person in my lifetime, well, I guess there was Reagan, who came along and said, I'm going to put America first. Americans first on trade, on immigration, on war, on jobs. Who could have guessed that appealing to this small niche of the voters, the American people, would be so popular? No one in the Republican brain trust. No, they were blown away by that. For years, my party, my ex-party, is now the Trumpian Republican Party, but the official GOP Republican Party, their position has been, you want to run for Republican. They say, oh yeah, okay, fine, that's great. Here are these issues you need to take. You're going to be for massive tax cuts, for pointless wars, for destroying the entitlement programs. It's like saying, here, we're going to give you some leg weights and blinders, and here, this 80-pound backpack for you to carry with you. Well, luckily for Trump, he didn't need the donors. He didn't need the party. So he could just run on the popular issues. He could take one from each side, whatever's popular, he'd do it. It was as if all the other Republican candidates, and I'm mostly talking about Republicans here, because that's the big shakeup. It's as if they all said, no, we're too dignified to take steroids. We won't run on those popular issues. And Trump said, screw it, I'm taking steroids. So it wasn't as if voters looked around and thought, oh, look, there's this tacky ghost reality TV star. Let's make him president. That would be fun. No, they finally had someone who was offering them a chance to vote on the issues they've been dying to vote on for 30 years. Obviously, the biggest issue that he ran and won on was immigration at every single campaign stop. Build the wall, build the wall. It was the line that launched 1,000 hats, posters, signs, chants, prototypes. And the left was upset about this because, number one, lots of cheap labor is really good for the rich. They get to look like big humanitarians, and they get the house cleaned. So they get Juanita the maid, and they get to strut around like they're Martin Luther King. It's also great for the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party weirdly enough, hasn't been able to get a majority of white Americans to vote for them since 1948, other than the aberrational 1964 landslide. That's kind of a tough record to run on if you can't get any white Americans to vote for you. So Democrats just looked around the country and said, okay, you won't vote for us Americans? Fine, we're bringing in ringers. And that's what they did with Teddy Kennedy's 1965 Immigration Act. Apparently, our entire lives have to be dedicated to, honoring the ascendancy of this one Irish Catholic family. Everybody in the Kennedy family gets a prize. So, Bobby and JFK got to have civil rights, but Teddy was in his room pouting and wouldn't come out until he got his own legacy. So they gave him civil rights for the entire world. It's like the belief of some weird hippie cult. The rest of the world has a right to move here, and you have to support them. That's our immigration policy now. So instead of people who had been populating America for the first 4 centuries of its existence, which was mostly British Isles, Germany, and Western Africans, suddenly we were taking the poorest of the poor, people from the most divergent cultures. It's like, no, this isn't going to be difficult enough that they're poor and have no skills. Let's make sure they also don't speak our language. And we have taken in now more than 50 million immigrants, 85% of them, this is since the 65 Act, it really started in 1970, 50 million immigrants, 85% from the third world, driving down wages, harming the working class, and the Democrats don't care. They're getting the votes. And the Republicans don't care because their donors want the cheap labor. Unfortunately, since Trump became president, he has not really been pedal to the metal on his promises. But his campaign proved these are the popular issues. The 3 pillars of his campaign that neither party, that no one in either other of the two parties would offer us, were no more just an end to this low-wage immigration, definitely illegal immigration, an end to job-killing trade deals, and an end to pointless wars. I was just telling them backstage at the South Carolina, before the South Carolina primary, and South Carolina is one of the most conservative states in the U.S. and very, very, very pro-military. They have loads of military bases there. During the Republican debate, Donald Trump accused Jeb Bush's brother, George Bush, of lying us into the war in Iraq. And although I don't think any lying was involved, looking back on it, would you do it again? Anyway, everybody said this was suicide to say in front of a very pro-Iraq war Republican primary audience. Trump won South Carolina, and he won it big. The no more pointless wars was a pillar of the Trump campaign. In fact, the one candidate who was the closest to Trump's issues was, weirdly enough, Bernie Sanders, but more when he was a socialist than when he became a Democrat. Back when he was a socialist, he used to say, oh no, open borders. In fact, when he first started his campaign, he was giving an interview, I think it was with Ezra Klein at Vox, and Ezra Klein, liberal journalist, starts talking about, oh, well, you're for open borders. And he said, no, that's a Koch brothers idea. If you don't know who the Koch brothers are, they're the face of evil in America as the big Republican. Well, I used to think they were on my side. No. Bernie Sanders is right. They just want the cheap labor, and they don't care what happens to ordinary Americans. What do they care? They're citizens of the universe. But what Trump's campaign showed, contrary to, these geniuses in the Republican brain trust in Washington, is there actually is something more important than donor money, and that's voters. Jeb Bush was supposed to have an unbeatable, or Jeb exclamation point, as his campaign billed him, he was supposed to have an unbeatable trust. He raised $140 million before the first primary. And I think he got 3 delegates? No, there is something more important than money. You need to have voters. Trump showed Republicans how to get voters, and I actually can't believe that they're not the ones who are holding Trump's feet to the fire to keep his agenda. I thought after that election, after the American people vote for really a somewhat implausible candidate to be president of the United States, I thought they'd be sending in trucks of Depends to Washington when they all realize, oh my gosh, the Republican people hate us. We have to stand for re-election. But no, it's back to business as usual. And unfortunately, Trump is like a couch cushion. He bears the impression of the last person who sat on him. And right, he staffed his White House. I didn't staff it. He staffed his White House 10 feet deep with people who hate his agenda. And everyone, I'm a writer, everyone's always trying to give me a TV show or a radio show, but I'm not really a job person. I find it more useful to read and pace in impotent rage. But I finally thought of a TV show I'd like to have. It's only one episode. It would be me, and I'll be hooked up to a polygraph machine too. I will invite in all of the members of the Trump White House, put them on a polygraph machine, and I'll ask them one question. Did you vote for Donald Trump? That's all I want to know. Because right now, I'm assuming Trump voted for himself, and I think his speechwriter did, and I think that's about it. So, you know, if he had to run for re-election now, I think his big campaign slogan would have to be, I'm still not Hillary. I mean, there are good things about that. Hillary was promising to take us straight to hell. We'd be in the back seat, oh, can't we stop? I have to go to the bathroom, I'm so hungry. No, if we keep driving, we can be there by midnight. But Trump promised to take us away from hell, and I don't know, I've been looking at the GPS since the inauguration, and I keep on, wanting to tap him on the shoulder. GPS says we're going in the wrong direction, sir. No, we can make it. I'm going to turn this around. Well, okay, he can still make it, but you got to turn things around. I mean, to have the first big legislative accomplishment of his first year, tax cuts? I'm a Republican. I love tax cuts, but that's not what he ran on. Half of his voters don't pay taxes. They want jobs. Tax cuts. I'll end with this because I'm dying to take your questions. I'm going to, really, I think they're really fun. And I'm very nice, nicer than I'd be to a liberal on TV. So I'm throwing a few things by the wayside. They'll come up in Q&A, I'm sure. And that is, the reason Trump supporters didn't care about the Access Hollywood tape, the reason he could have shot someone on Fifth Avenue, the reason his support was like tempered steel was because Republicans had been lied to so many times, over and over and over again. And here there was this wild candidate who never backed down, even when he said crazy stuff. We thought, finally, maybe this one will keep his promises. If he betrays the voters, you will not see the rage and fury of the base, not the ones I was describing with a 3D chess, but the real base, like there will be against Donald Trump. He will not be able to get them back. There is no number of rallies he can hold and promising to build the wall. He's got to build the wall. And right now he's looking at two paths. He could be America's greatest president if he keeps his campaign promises. He could be up on Mount Rushmore. He could be greater than Ronald Reagan because we are so close to the end right now. We are in overtime. The game is tied. We got 3 outs left or 3 strikes left. If he makes it, he'll be the greatest hero and the greatest president America has ever had. But if he doesn't, he will be the man who wrecked America. Thank you. I'll take your questions.
So thank you for your speech. I'm going to steer away just a little bit from the questions about Trump and focus a little bit more on some of your own comments and beliefs. So in 2014, you told Fox News Instead of arguing about whether or not we're allowed to describe Muslim terrorists as Muslim terrorists, why don't we argue about whether or not it's a good idea to be letting in so many immigrants who blew up the Boston Marathon? And indeed, last year, the union hosted Kiza Khan, who you called an angry Muslim with a thick accent. Do you not think that making comments like this unnecessarily causes extreme racial tensions and blames those who have nothing to do with such crimes?
No, I don't think so, because, I mean, we're talking about a specific policy with the Boston Marathon. Why are we letting in all of these asylees? We were warned 3 times about the Boston Marathon bombers. The Russian government called the FBI, called the CIA, but no, we gotta get them in, Just gotta keep getting in people who might possibly vote Democrat and clean Nancy Pelosi's house on the side. So, you know, I mean, you'll notice I didn't even mention the prospect that some of them will end up, you know, flipping out and committing terrorist acts or slaughtering Americans at the Pulse nightclub, at San Bernardino, at the 9/11 terrorists themselves. What's the upside? I mean, with most things in life, there's an upside and there's a downside. You know, taking showers and baths, it wastes a lot of water. We need to conserve water. But on the other hand, we don't want people to smell, so we're not going to worry about the wasted water. Okay, the downside of mass Muslim immigration, and we're taking more immigrants from Muslim countries, and we have been for 20 years, since 9/11, more immigrants from Muslim countries than we do from the entire British Isles, our mother country. Why? Why? Wouldn't it be easier if they spoke English? I mean, just the speaking English part, just the amount of money we spend on English as a second language classes. But no, I'm certainly not saying that okay, most Muslims aren't terrorists, they're lovely people, blah, blah, blah. But still, they cost us money. What's the upside?
Do you not think, though, that rather than just singling out the perpetrators of the crimes and going for the group as a whole and making the generalized statements, it can cause tensions that actually harm the lives of many?
No, well, in fact, I'll get to that second part. Can it harm anyone? It hasn't. I mean, right after Trump was elected, there were all these fake hate crimes. Every single one of them turned out to be a fake. Every single one. The alleged attacks on synagogues. That was some Jewish kid. He fled. He never got prosecuted. He went back to Israel. The other one for the synagogue attacks was a black social justice warrior working at BuzzFeed. And every single one of the Muslim hijab attacks. Americans are nice people. I mean, they really... It's hurting them that they're generous and nice people, and I mean, I understand that sentiment, and I love that about America, and I hate that, you know, I have to be the bratty one pointing out that we got to stop being so nice because it's hurting our country. But it is hurting our country, and you know, okay, nobody else has to break a sweat, but I'm going to be out there trying to save the country even if it hurts people's feelings. Americans aren't mean. It is not causing hijabs to be ripped off. It is causing Americans to be falsely accused of ripping off hijabs.
So kind of moving on to talk about immigration, which you touched upon in your speech. You've called all immigrants a-holes on live TV and the losers of the world.
No, I didn't. You know, I'm going to talk to Melania's lawyer who sued for... You guys have much better slander rules, and I salute you for that. Oh, for Pete's sake, he said, I'll say what he... Well, you know what he said, but it was S-hole. And on America, on fake news CNN, they said the full word... These are my bodyguards. Some of them work for fake news, very fake news CNN. They fully said shithole over and over and over and over again because, you know, they're so offended. On other networks, the standard thing to say was S-hole. And the way they described it on, I think it was Good Morning Britain, they described it was like 1,600 words, a scatological expression that we will not mention. And I'm listening to it thinking, I know what he said and I don't know what you're talking about. So I was just trying to be accurate and using whatever. And it was saying S-hole, you know, like a-hole, but it was S-hole. They lied, and you can see the tape. I wouldn't slip and say asshole. It was S-hole.
Sure, okay, but you also...
Oh no, that's part of my libel suit. I think I'm going to collect a lot on that.
So I mean, the First Lady is also an immigrant herself. Do you not think that there are lots of immigrants who have brought a lot of good to the US and the US economy? How do you feel about, again, kind of saying that we should ban immigration?
No, of course there have been some good immigrants, but that's all we've been hearing about, and we need a break for a while. I mean, America takes more than half of the entire world's refugees. So you people don't get snooty with me. We take more than half of the entire nation, entire world's refugees. How about Mexico take a few? How about China take a few? How about Israel take a few? No, we have to stop. America needs a little me time.
Sure. Okay. So moving on from talking about that, then you've also been known for saying that you're not anti-LGBT, but you're against gay marriage. Is that correct?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So do you not think that just as you have certain rights to freedom, such as the right to free speech, do you not think that freedom should apply here too?
Well, first of all, I have a huge gay male fan base, and none of them want gay marriage, so I gotta side with them on this. So that's point one. And point two, no, I mean, what is the point of marriage? The point of marriage is it's the most civilizing, it's how you create, you don't live in Lord of the Flies. It's the way you bring kids into the world. And you raise them, and you need a mommy and a daddy. And I mean, people from single parent families don't like to hear this, but the research, and I wish them luck, but the research is pretty overwhelming that it's not a day at the beach being raised, even, in a single parent family. You do need mommy and daddy. You need both the masculine influence and the female influence, and I suspect, and we've already seen the results, as we all suspected, the gay divorce rate is through the roof. But the point of marriage is not to make people feel good about themselves. It is to create this environment for creating civilized little human beings.
So you'd be against kind of gay couples who aren't married as well from adopting children?
Yes.
Okay. So people have said that your looks have contributed to your success. How do you feel about this? And
I thank you.
Do you think that women need to use their appearance to get ahead, especially in public-facing roles?
I just want to mull that question for a while because I love it so much. It's funny because I always thought I'd have to instruct the left. They had to get their attacks on me, get together and coordinate, because it was either that I was the ugliest thing that ever lived or I was only on TV because I was pretty. I definitely prefer the latter. No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you take I don't think I'm that good looking, but you take whatever advantages you have. What I am is a writer. My biggest advantage is that I'm an agoraphobe, so I like to stay home and read.
So what is it what do you think is the secret behind your success then, both kind of in the political world and as an author?
I think it's blind hatred. It gets me up in the morning. I can stay up all night researching. They had just about won the debate on Joe McCarthy, but I will stay up all night too. No, I like to research and write. I will tell you, because you're young people, and this is actually, I think, useful advice for you. Well, for one thing, don't go to law school. But for another thing, I think it's very useful to get batted around a bit when you first graduate. There's so many jobs out there, you don't even know they exist. And what I do, I love, and I would do free, don't tell my publisher. But people used to ask me if I preferred the writing the books or the research and writing or the publicizing the books, because it's fun to go on TV, it's fun to be interviewed too. But I realized, I think it was when I wrote Demonic, I was so happy. I was having so much fun researching it. And I like not having a job. I like not having to wake up to an alarm clock, and I could just keep reading until late at night and run things down. And I like to do my own original research. I don't believe secondhand sources. As you'll know if you read Demonic, I went back to get, which wasn't easy, the actual trial of Marie Antoinette, because the secondary sources from, allegedly impressive historians there were slight discrepancies, particularly about her son being able to testify, and I didn't think he could talk. But anyway, I ordered the transcript, and it was really fun. I mean, I feel like a detective. And I put a lot of work into them. So anyway, that's a long way of saying I get more prolix when I haven't had a cigarette. I'll try to speed it up. There are a lot. Do what you love and you'll be good at it. Don't just go into something because this is what you always thought you were going to do. Just keep, because I did go to law school. What a waste of time that was.
So we actually had Roger Stone visit us a few weeks ago now, and we discussed the possibility of a Michelle Obama candidacy at the next presidential election. How do you feel about that?
I'd be surprised if she's interested. My bet right now is Kamala Harris. If she runs, I say it's Kamala, because the Democratic Party, I mean, I alluded to this very briefly in my speech, the Democratic Party really did become a lifestyle party in the 90s. They used to be the party, I mean, probably the old Bernie Sanders could have been a Democrat rather than a socialist. The Democratic Party was allegedly about the working class. And man, it must have pained them to have to pretend to care about people who live in Indiana, because the Democrats do not give a crap about the people between Los Angeles and New York. Don't give a crap about them. And when Clinton came along, he brought the two sides together, basically, you know, the very, very poor welfare recipients, immigrants, and Wall Street and Hollywood. And now it's fantastic because, you know, Wall Street, their politics align with their social interests. They were always for, you know, drugs and rock and roll. And now Clinton and Chuck Schumer and Hillary Clinton, don't worry, we're going to take care of Wall Street too. So that, you know, leaves the entire middle part of the country it's a new world. It's the weirdest thing. When Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump were the closest the two candidates were. Any two other candidates. Bernie Sanders used to be for gun rights.
Okay, so I think it would be fair to say that you've faced a fair amount of criticism throughout your career. How do you deal with the criticism? Like, do you take it personally?
I love it. I like the cleverer attacks better, and that's why I genuinely do like speaking on college campuses. I wrote about this at the beginning of one of my books. I think if liberals had any brains, they'd be Republicans. I wrote about my college speeches, and it was quite noticeable to me. I probably have given more college speeches than anyone else. And at the better colleges, I could tell how bad the protests were going to be and how bad the questions would be, and whether the questions would be interesting questions, like your questions are, or if it would just be, you know, kids standing up, stamping their feet, and calling me a fascist. And it was basically, you could determine it by the SAT scores. And I hate to say this because I hate Harvard, but Harvard and Yale, they were fantastic. They were really fun. They're clever questions. They're interesting, and it's fun.
Okay, so you don't mind taking on that kind
and
of
as for the vicious ones, and just, you know, the stamping your feet and saying I'm ugly, I mean, I don't really mind them. I'm glad I'm getting under their skin. I just, not that intellectually stimulating.
Well, let's hope the questions today are good then. So with that, I think let's take some audience questions. I see a hand that's gone up straight at the front over there.
Hi, Ann. I've seen or heard you a lot on the Howie Carr show, and I just had a quick question about, we've seen numerous instances of heinous yet preventable crimes committed by illegal aliens, and I think that could stem from a cultural difference between America and third world countries. What do you believe specifically makes third world countries incompatible with American values?
No, that's a really wonderful question. I thank you for asking that. I cover it in Adios America. America is very unique, along with our mother country, and this comes out in a lot of defense lawyers' statements. One guy defending, it's in the book, defending a couple of Iraqis for raping two little girls, and he said, look, in other parts of the world, there isn't as much respect for women and children. America is unique in the world. The defense lawyer is saying this. There was a judge in New York I forget his name right now, but a Chinese man had killed his wife with a claw hammer because she had committed adultery on him. Their son came home. He just greets the son at the door saying, you know, "Hi, son, just killed mom." He's covered with blood. And the judge gave him probation, saying that in Chinese culture, it would be so humiliating for a man to be cuckolded. We have to understand their culture. There was, I'll just give you one more, a Rocky and a Mexican woman married. They had a child. This was out in Illinois. This actually showed up on one of my favorite crime shows, Forensic Files. Luckily, the Iraqi man was under suspicion for terrorism, so the FBI had been wiretapping his house. Their daughter started to date a black kid at school. They were so angry at her for dishonoring the family by dating a black kid, they killed her. And it was all on tape. So the quotes from the jury were pretty, and the prosecutor, they all said, "I've never heard anything like this. I'll never get this out of my head." And the mother's holding her down as the father is saying, "You'll die tonight," and he's stabbing her to death. And the defense that was made, with lots of college professors showing up, and the Iraqi community all telling newspapers, "No, you have to understand, this was very humiliating for the family. You have to understand, in our culture," and you know, we've just gotten kind of used to, we can spread our values around the world without destroying our own values. Anglo-Saxon values toward women and children and the elderly and the weakest members of society are, as all of these lawyers I've just cited, unique in the world. Yes, we can assimilate people. We do a great job assimilating people. But there's a reason the main, anti-immigration group in the US is called Numbers USA. You can't do it when you're bringing in this many people and they're living in the same neighborhoods and the street signs are changed to their languages and their customs. There was an official in the Clinton administration who said, you know, we've passed the time where immigrants have to assimilate to our values. It's about time we assimilate to their values. So, you know, I just want to give a warning to, well, my fellow American women, and I guess British women, you have no idea how good you have it. And it's going to change if we, at least in my country, it's been going on a long time. We just need a break. We just need a pause. We'll pick up the immigration again after that, but we need to take some time to assimilate the ones already here. Or there.
So just before we move on to the next question, I think we can all agree that the crimes that you just described are absolutely disgusting. But at the end of the day, it's not just immigrants who are committing these crimes. People who have lived in America for hundreds of years.
Well, of course. And I'd love to be able to deport our criminals. If you want to take them, perhaps we could work out a deal. We can't do anything about the criminals who we already have. We don't have to bring in more criminals. We don't need the rest of the world's criminals. We don't need the rest of the world's poor people. We got our own poor people. And look, I'm telling you, a federal judge said he would not have given probation to an American man who killed his wife. He gave probation to this man because he came from a different culture. That is changing our culture. That is not equality before the law.
But again, going back to the refugees that we spoke about earlier, do you not think that there's something kind of, you know, cruel about leaving them to suffer in all these different parts of the world where there are terrible wars going on? Do you not think that, you know, as humans, every human life matters?
Yes, of course, but I think we can help them better in situ. Why do we have to bring them to our country? It's much cheaper to help them where they are. And also, at a certain point, we got to save ourselves. The lifeboat is going to sink otherwise. And I think it's bad for me as an American, but I'd say it's pretty bad for the whole rest of the world when America isn't out there as a force for good in the world. And we've tried to be. There's many times I disagree with. I'm sure many times you disagree with. But we certainly try to go around the world making it better and saving people from warlords and sending in food and trying to shut down their drug dealers and defeating the Nazi war machine. When there's no America as a force for good in the world, I really think you're looking at 1,000 years of darkness. So we got to save ourselves.
Should we go to the next question? I can see a hand just over there. Yeah, in the red jacket.
I'd like to thank Ann Coulter for giving a better comedy set here than she did at the roast of Rob Lowe, firstly. But
I was great.
sure. But so I'm really interested that you are so willing to defend like Anglo-Saxon values of like women and the elderly when you have a president who literally said that he was going to grab women by the pussy. You had an incredibly high-profile rape case of Brock Turner where he got off because it would impact his schooling. Do you not think that...
Wait, what are you talking about? What's the second one?
Brock Turner.
Oh, okay, you finally got one.
The Stanford swimmer.
Right.
Do you not think that when you characterize such crimes as only coming from immigrant communities and only coming from refugees and this sort of notion of incompatibility with these values, all you're actually doing is ostracizing these people and creating the discontent towards the West that you say is endemic to these countries, but is actually probably something that you are inflaming?
First of all, you know, we only have an hour. I will assume any question denouncing me has met with wide approval and we can cut down on the applause. Point one, this is a lie that the media keeps spreading, that Trump said he commits that he grabs women's P words. He was talking about celebrity culture. He said, when you are a celebrity, they let you do it. They could win that case in summary judgment in court. They let you do it. So to be, I mean, making a comment, it's quite clearly true. Some portion of women are willing to do a lot of things for money, to be with a celebrity, to get on Fox News. The Brock.
He's saying that about women. Like you are defending you're defending these feminist values of like American. You're getting up there and being like, yeah, you know, loads of women will do this. I'll sell it.
No, I think I got the question. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not that offended. Okay, he was coarse, but he didn't say he does this. He happens to be, I mean, he's the kind of person who brags about things he didn't do. That's a different kind of idiot. And I think that's what we're talking about. And I don't think the feminists are particularly offended that he used the P word. Otherwise, they wouldn't be marching around with those hats. Whoa, you must be really offended. I wouldn't behave in such a coarse way. I think the most shocking thing about that tape really didn't get any attention, was that he claimed he was hitting on a married woman. And the funniest part about it was the married woman's reaction was, you were hitting on me? Furniture shopping is an aphrodisiac? You gotta get your game up. I mean, that I thought was somewhat more offensive, except it was so innocuous, the woman didn't even know she was hitting on him. Okay, yeah, there was one weird case, that Brock case that was covered like the 9/11 attack. One drunk guy with a drunk woman. There were more cases of white men being falsely accused. Duke Lacrosse, UVA, Ferguson. Mattress girl at Columbia, the girl that walks around with a mattress on her back, and then he finally releases the emails he sent to her. No, white men on college campuses are far more falsely accused than guilty. But what we're talking about is not the numbers. We're talking about bringing in people we don't already have living in our country. Okay. I'm all for locking up our own criminals. Again, I'd love to deport them. I'd love to send them to you if you love them so much. I'd love to, but we can't. They're already our citizens. Why would any country bring in criminals we don't already have? We're full on criminals. We got them. And as for having other cultures hate us, fine, go ahead, hate us. I want you to hate us in your own country.
I can see a question just at the front. Yeah, here, in the orange scarf, yeah.
Hello. I was quite interested as you were giving your speech. you said, you thought the Republican establishment and the Koch brothers are on your side, but it turns out they just want the cheap labor, and Bernie Sanders was right. And then you're now very disappointed in the president because he said all these things that you wanted him to do, and he also has turned out possibly to be not what you had wanted. So on some sort of quite big things, the political things, you've turned out to be quite wrong. And
No, really, I didn't support the Koch brothers. I was just
the
surprised.
Republican establishment that I
didn't.
quote you to say I thought they were on my side and they're not, and my party has left me because they're fake, whatever. My point just being that you have just said that on these two things you're quite wrong.
No, I have not.
And my
You can keep describing that as saying I'm quite wrong. Look, I'm the weatherman. I'm going to tell you how the weather is. If it's raining, it's raining. If it's sunny, it's sunny.
That's not
Koch
particularly
brothers
useful
did
then.
support stuff I supported. Now they don't.
But my point being that can you then convincingly defend your own judgment based on that? Because you have now
Yes, but
supported
not on your
people.
mischaracterization. Yes, of course I can. I will absolutely 100% would do the exact same thing with Donald Trump. I would write "In Trump We Trust." I think I explained that in my speech, but I will go on and explain it even more.
Definition of insanity, isn't it?
Okay,
Doing the same
do
thing
we
over
have
and
the
over again.
question done yet? Because the mumbling as I'm talking is going to get very distracting. No, of course, he was the only choice we had. We've been waiting. There was no one else even offering it to us. Of course people knew. Yeah, maybe he's not reliable. Maybe he won't do it, but he's the only game in town. I would write the same book. I would introduce him at rallies. I mean, like I say, the upside is, and for any politician who wants to take those issues, now we know these are the popular issues, but it's, I mean, every other election has been, I don't know, why do people vote Republican? Because they're not Democrats. And why do Democrats vote Republican or Democrat? Because they're not Republicans. But Americans haven't been able to vote on the things they wanted to vote on. You get lip service on immigration. You get lip service on bringing jobs back. When you have 16 absolute lunatics, 17 if we throw in Hillary and Bernie Sanders completely flipping as soon as he runs for president as a Democrat. He was better as a socialist than a Democrat. He was for gun rights. He was against open borders. Suddenly he runs as a Democrat and that he forgets about the laws of supply and demand. Oh no, I guess dumping millions and millions of low-wage people on America won't hurt other low-wage workers. But no, of course, I do the same thing. We see how things turn out.
Should we go to the question in the aisle just there? Yeah, just there. Yeah.
I was wondering if you could comment on why you have systematically denied the existence of climate change, especially in relation to your comment last summer that it was more believable that Hurricane Harvey had hit Houston because they had an openly gay mayor than because of climate change.
You know, I really am the original Trump, where you can't attack me unless you lie about what I said. My tweet was, I do not believe Hurricane Harvey hit Houston because they have an openly lesbian mayor. But that's more believable than it was caused by climate change.
And why is that?
That's the quotes. And man, I wish we had a little global warming right now. I am freezing to death. We've been hearing about this for 30 years. And let's see, somebody, wait, are you allowed to have your little iPhones in here? Could you Google when Al Gore was first warning that if we don't do something immediately, it was like 30 years ago. We didn't do anything and the world is still here.
Okay, so should we take the question right in the corner of there, the lady in the green jumper in the corner of the room, right at the back?
Hi, thank you for your speech this evening. When you make comments such as, for example, more white men in high schools have been accused falsely of rape than actually committing, where are your sources? You said several statements throughout the entire speech which you're perfectly validated to have those opinions, but I would like to know what states, what facts, what figures you're backing up with.
I am making the wild leap that if after living through the Duke lacrosse case, which roiled our country for a good 6 months with criminal prosecutions being brought against lacrosse players, the whole thing was nonsense, it was made up. The prosecutor, what are you defending the prosecutor who was disbarred there? You're accused, okay. Well, okay, and we have a peanut gallery that supports false accusations against white males. Oh my gosh, their parents' houses, and it was because, oh, they're so rich and they're so white, and it was white privilege, and the whole thing was nonsense. Rolling Stone then ran the story about Haven Monahan, which is how I make restaurant reservations now. That is such a great name. Haven Monahan allegedly inviting this girl to a completely innocent frat house, being raped on a glass table, gang raped, with the girl's back into the shards of glass. And I'm reading through this article. When it got to her saying, one of the frat boys said, "Move its leg," I said, okay, I'm calling BS on this story. Whereas, the rest of the media was, ooh, it gave me goosebumps. That was believed for about 2 weeks. There was a liberal journalist, Richard Bradley, who started saying, not believing it. And he was viciously attacked by feminists for saying he thought it was suspicious. Eventually, it did come out the whole thing was made up by a delusional woman, and just bought wholesale by a reporter at Rolling Stone who wanted to believe it. Mattress Girl at Columbia was featured. This heroine. It was her art school project. She'd carry a mattress around on her back. Carry That Weight, it was called. She was written up on the cover of the front page of the New York Times. The entire mainstream media believed it, and then, as I mentioned, the student who allegedly had raped her released her texts to her both before and after, and it was clearly nonsense. He was allowed to finish. I think he got a settlement against Columbia for their absolute absence of due process. If there were a real case out there, I'm thinking our media would have covered it. So we have the Brock, what's his name, the Stanford case, which again, this is one guy, one girl, both smashed. He's a bad person, yeah, should have gone to prison, but when that gets covered by 9/11, I think we can be sure that's the only case they have.
I think we've maybe got time for one more question.
Pressure.
So yeah, no pressure. If we go to the hand at the back, again, just there, yeah.
I'm just quite interested by your defense of American values. Do you not think there's an extent of arrogance about your suggestion that America has so much better values than the rest of the world? You've listed lots of ways they're better. You yourself acknowledge that it's generosity that allows immigrants to come to America. What right do you think you necessarily have to tell other cultures that your supposed values that allow Hillary to be essentially her whole campaign devalued on account of her being a woman? You can say what you want that they didn't happen, the hate crimes, but people are huge amounts of racism in your police force, in your systematically across the country. Do you really think these are better values than the rest of the world, that you can't learn anything from immigrants?
No, I don't think, yes, we can learn some things from immigrants, but the question, as I understand it, is why do you want to spread your values to the rest of the world? Look, that's fine. That's fine, okay, if they don't want them, I'm really fine. I was America first before Trump was America first. I really just want to take care of our own country. But we are bringing in values that are demonstrably at odds and with a majority of Americans, the treatment of women and children, the honor killings, the clitorectomies, the ripping off of government programs. I mean, we're dealing with crimes that our police force, we have no immunity to it. We're not used to this kind of thing. thing, it's manifestly obvious that certain different ethnic groups excel and different cultures excel at different kinds of crimes. We're used to, for one thing, we're used to criminals being dumb, which has been a great advantage. You know, they kill their spouses for $10,000 of insurance money and leave their DNA all over the place. No, now we're getting criminals who have high IQs. They come from cultures where it's not embarrassing to be a criminal. It's great, it's cool, you ripped off the government. I mean, our government programs are like a Disneyland for immigrants. One of the things the Iraqi and the Mexican woman who honor killed their daughter for dating a black kid, one of the things he was on the tape saying was, oh, I love America, it's so great, I can game all these welfare programs. I mean, that goes into the idea of a country being a family and caring about one another. It's one thing when we are paying in enormous taxes in order to take care of, you know, somebody else's kid who's born without a liver or born with spina bifida. Okay, you know, this is what we're agreeing to. We're all Americans. We're in this together. But when we're bringing in immigrants not only with very different values, but who need liver transplants, and they're taking the liver transplants that was kind of for our own people. You take care of your people, we take care of our people. And I'd also say, since this is the last question, just let me expand and say one more thing. I mean, the left loves to talk about diversity. I mean, I think I'm the person who truly loves diversity. I want to go to England. No, you want us to be all one blend and look the same and there's no difference anyplace. I want to come to England and meet people named, you know, Nigel and Simon and Oliver, and you know, I want to hear your prissy little accents, and I want to go to Germany, and I want the streets to be really clean and the trains to run on time, and go to the Netherlands, and I can see their clogs and their tulips, and they have their own little weird, you know, the stuff we eat. I just think cultures should be preserved, and it's easier to preserve cultures if they stay in their own countries. That's the true diversity.
So yeah, unfortunately that's all we've got time for this evening. But if you could all join me in saying thank you to Anne for joining us this evening.